Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch, and welcome today to what is the 8th annual Just One More Watch State of the Collection video. Time flies when you're having fun, and I have a lot of fun talking about watches. This is basically my annual stock take where I rake through my cupboards, let the dust settle, and then see what has actually managed to survive another 12 months in the brutal Squid Game-like environment that is my watch collection. You'll see how brutal it is when we go through the first section today, the What Got Chopped section. Now, I've been a bit more organised over the last 12 months or so, and I've been storing my collection in dedicated assigned boxes. You know, it's not rocket science. Top box, Casio box, micro brand box, ALIEXPRESS box, etc. And I'm going to show you them in that structure today. I will also leave timestamps to those relevant boxes in the description of the video. You're welcome to skip around if you wish, but make sure you stick around for the end. I've only really got one watch in my crosshairs for 2025. Might not be the one that you expect, but there were clues in a video mid-year. Alright then, let's start with the What Got Chopped section. I had a good look through the State of the Collection video last year, and my goodness, the axe has been swinging over the last 12 months or so, as usual. These watches were all part of my collection last year, but they still got chopped, they still got moved on. Now, there always has been a lot of turnover in the Seiko box, and after hanging on for a couple of years, the lovely Red Wine King Seiko got the boot this year, as did the Alpinist GMT. I just never really settled with that one. It's a great watch and I got it for a good price, but maybe the proportions I felt were slightly off from my wrist. The stealthy black Seiko Chrono got replaced by another stealthy black Seiko Chrono, as you'll see later on. The Hojicha Pressage, the green tea Pressage. That might be a bit of a surprise in the chop section, given how much I praised that dial when I got the watch. But there's another Pressage that I prefer, and I just felt there was no point in keeping both, so that one lost out. Mini Turtle. I'm now bought two, sold two for the Mini Turtle. It's probably one of those watches that I might end up buying again at some stage. Similarly, the 5 GMT. I was hanging on to this orange one as a bit of a benchmark, but I decided to move it on. I can always buy it back again if I regret it. There's plenty of them now cropping up second hand. Likewise, the modded tuner with a sapphire crystal. Again, like the black chronograph, it was replaced by something arguably a little bit more interesting in 2024. The AliExpress box is another brutal box with high turnover, and the Avocado San Martin has been replaced by one of its stablemates. And the bronze SEA-GULL 1963, I figured one 1963 was probably enough, so the bronze one left me. Micro brands now, I hung on to that Guerlain Cosmonauta for many years, but it was directly replaced this year, so I sold it. The Protect Tritium was also replaced pretty much like for like. There is clearly madness to a lot of this chaos, but there is usually a little bit of method behind it, with pieces often being upgraded rather than just chopped willy-nilly. Having said that, the Houtman got the chop despite the custom case back, and the Helm Vanuatu, again, I had retained this one for a number of years as a bit of a benchmark, but I never actually wore it, so I sold it to someone who hopefully will. The Spinnaker Braveheart was passed on to another member of the Scottish diaspora. The Aloha GMT was a really nice watch and a bit of a unicorn, given that the company no longer exists, but it also left me this year regardless, as did the Christopher Ward Moonphase, in anticipation of a certain other bright red Christopher Ward arriving later this month. And finally, another watch getting the chop that might surprise a few of you, the Nomos Club Campus. A watch I had been hankering after for years, and I finally picked one up in 2023, but I never really settled with it. Although, again, it's another watch I can see myself picking up in the future if the price is right. 18 watches then, 18 watches that would make a fantastic collection in and of themselves, and that's just the stuff that got chopped. What about the stuff that survived or even thrived? Well, one section that grew this year was the Erebus section. We have now survived a year in the cutthroat micro market and have launched a number of new models over the course of the last year, and I have allowed myself to keep one production unit of each. So I now have a red Origin 41, I wear that one all the time on the FKM rubber strap. I have a black Origin 38. That one though has stayed on the original bracelet. I managed to sneak an orange Ascent on 3-link O-style bracelet off the shelf. I wanted a black Helix as well, but they sold out before I could grab one, so I guess I need to bring black Helix back at some stage if I want one. And the most recent is this Coke Origin GMT on all brush J-style bracelet. These ones only arrived at Erebus HQ a couple of weeks ago. Stephen and I are really happy with these. We think it's probably the best version of the Origin name and style so far. Stay tuned for a field watch, a chronograph, and a big boy diver over the course of 2025. Talking of big boys, let's do my top box early today. These are the big hitters. This is the box I keep in my bedroom, and I've been trying to wear some of these more expensive pieces more often this year, hence why I keep it in the house. Everything else stays here in the studio. Let's start with the biggest boy of all then, my 2015 Breitling Navitimer. I can't believe it's almost 10 years since I got this one. It still looks box fresh, because it's really a bit of a special occasion watch for me. For example, I last wore it in early November for my birthday, and then it went back in the box. That kind of says it all really. I love the watch, but I want to keep it as a special occasion watch, and I want to keep it looking fantastic, just as good as it looks now in 10 years time. One watch I barely wore over the last 12 months, on the other hand, is my Omega Aquaterra. Don't tell Mrs. JOMW, because she's the one that bought it for me. It doesn't have a quick set date, so it's a right pain in the arse to wear as a rotation piece. It is, however, one of those dangerous watches that if you put it on, you never take it off, but this year, I just didn't put it on all that often. Moving on to my Tudor Black Bay 58. I love this watch and I do wear it quite regularly. No date, so it's a great rotation piece, unlike the Aquaterra. It's on an Uncle Seiko all brush Jubilee, super comfortable, and the 39mm shape is probably spot on for my wrist. And so far so good with the caseback inscription. Oris Diver 65 Caliber 400. This was in the absent friends section in last year's State of the Collection video, because it stopped when I was in Scotland late 2023, and it took me ages to send it into Oris and to get it repaired. They duly repaired it under warranty though, so it's back in the collection, and always a watch that I really enjoy wearing. But not as much as I enjoy wearing my Citizen Chronomaster. It is still the watch that has had more wrist time than anything else over the last 12 months. It's so light, it's so comfortable, it's so accurate, and it's always at the right time and the right date. It does, however, now look like it's had a couple of years of use and abuse though, because it has. The most expensive new entry of 2024 is my Grand Seiko 9F GMT, despite the fact that I bought it used from Japan. It's undoubtedly better looking and better finished, in certain areas at least, than the Chronomaster, but it hasn't taken over. It has become a regular rotation piece though, because it's always at the right time and usually at the right date. It's just lovely, and it will definitely be hanging around in this box for the foreseeable future. Next up is a watch that has been a bit of a hobby horse for me personally of late, because I like it. It's the Hamilton PSR. I picked this one up early in 2024, and I moved on the Gerlach Cosmonauta shortly thereafter because they were just so similar. Surprisingly nice overall, this Hamilton. It's a great brand, it's got a great backstory. It's generally a great watch. I see they just released a new version with a different bracelet. It's alright, but I'm going to stick with this one for a while. And watch number 8 of 8 is my favourite Square G-Shock. I've had this one for a couple of years now. It's the Bluetooth and solar version. We don't get the atomic clock signal down here in Australia, so this is the top of the range effectively for me. And it now has some rather satisfying paint splatters and scratch marks. Evidence of me using it exactly the way that a G-Shock should be used. And I see no reason again why this one won't be exactly in that corner slot, the number 8 slot in the top box for a while to come. Okay, so those were the big boys then. Let's flip it and look very briefly, and I do mean very briefly, at the AliExpress 10-piece box. I made a rate or roast my Ali collection video a few months ago, and they haven't changed since then. So let's be brief. And let's kick off with a couple of classics. The Steel Dive 1970 is, in my opinion, the world's best value mechanical watch. watch. Less than $70 on sale, there's nothing else that can touch this one at that price in terms of specs, build quality and all-round magnificence. If you don't have one already, do yourself a favour and pick one up the next time they're on sale. Likewise, the Baltony Type A military chronograph. They do a number of this style of watch. This to me is the best of them. Again, just exceptional quality for the price. It's legible, it's attractive, it's well proportioned. It is a cracker of a watch. One new addition this year to the Ali box is this Mercure Marathon copy that I think is better proportioned than the Marathon. This one has tritium tubes on the hands and indices, it's a manual wind movement, and I now have it on this fantastic Zero Pass strap from Anachronist. I picked up a few of these late this year. They're excellent if you like the look of a NATO, but not the bulk of a NATO. And I wear this Mercure surprisingly often because of those tritium tubes. The Avocado San Martin 116 got the chop because it was replaced by this Tropic Dial Force Patina version of exactly the same watch. It's a little bit different, and I think it's quite effective. This is one of their best, if not their very best model. Lobini Micro Rotor. I bought this one a couple of years ago now, and I think it is a lovely watch for the money with a great looking movement. You never know, you might even see an Erebus powered by the Hangzhou 5000 at some point in the future. You will not, however, see an Erebus powered by the SEA-GULL ST19 at any point in the future. SEA-GULL just announced this year that they're only selling them in batches of 10,000 pieces each. That rules out the vast majority of micro brands. I'll be honest though, we had no plans to use that movement anyway because the failure rate is horrendous. This one works well though. I love the 1963. I reckon it's another must-have for the affordable collector. And you gotta have a Pagani in there somewhere as well, I reckon. I think the Speedy lookalike is outstanding for the price, and I've always enjoyed this kind of white, silver and red colour version. I've also always enjoyed the Cadison C1032. These used to be an AliExpress staple, but they're now getting hard to find. If you can grab one for less than about $65 US, like the Steel Dive, they're a bit of a no-brainer. There are a couple of new watches in the Ali box this year. A Seastern Doxa lookalike, just outstandingly well made for just over $100. And the Pierre Paulin Star Wheel. Now, this, unlike some of the other obscure watches on Ali, is powered by a Miyota 8000 series movement, so it's going to be reliable. And it's just such an interesting looking watch with a very unusual way of reading the time, but on wrist it wears exactly the same as any other conventional circular watch in my collection, or indeed your collection. Alright then, so that was the Ali only box, and I'm quite happy with it as it currently sits. I have bought and sold and reviewed a lot of watches from AliExpress over the years, and those are 10 of the very best. Talking of the very best, let's do the Casios next. In addition to my Solar Bluetooth Square G, I also have a basic 5600 that I've had for a while now, because why not? Having said that, I actually sold this one to a friend in Canberra and then bought it back off him a couple of years later, so I'm not going to sell it again. And this year I picked up a full metal G-Shock for the first time, specifically the JOMW B5000 with the negative display. I originally said when I reviewed them that the problem with these is that they're G-Shocks that you don't want to wear like a G-Shock. You don't want to get them scratched because they're just so pretty. But I've had this one for a few months now, it's beginning to get a few scratches on it, and I'm relaxing into it. I think that's a good thing, and I've really been enjoying the watch more as a consequence of those scratches. I've had this Casio calculator watch since 2007. I bought it on a trip to Singapore because you couldn't buy them here in Australia at that time, and global e-commerce wasn't quite as developed as it is now, shall we say. I then bought a resin case DBC32 as well because nothing says nerd quite like a Casio calculator watch, apart from maybe 2 Casio calculator watches. One new addition to the Casio box this year was the little LF20W, a pretty low-key release by the big Japanese brand from 2023. These are now available at half of the RRP, so I bought one. Now, I love my square Gs, but I don't mind the occasional octagonal G either. And I have 2 GA2100s in my collection. My original black and white one that I've had now for a number of years, and the latest manga version that I picked up mid this year. Excellent watches, although I must admit I wouldn't be quite as keen to do the gardening with the manga one. I am going to try and keep that nice. No F91W in my collection. I prefer the W2112H instead. This watch is arguably all the watch anyone actually needs. And as such, it has a purity of purpose that few other watches in this collection can match. The AQ800 is not one of those watches. It is, however, a lot of fun. And last but not least, I have not one, not two, but three of the best value watches in the world. I'm on record as saying that many times. Of course, I'm referring to the AE1200. Why do I have three though? Well, the black one is stock standard. The black with gold one is half modified. It now has a metal case and sapphire crystal. And the silver one is fully modified with a cleaned up faceplate and metal case, sapphire crystal, and a more solid bracelet. I took the black and gold one with me to New York, and I have to say it was genuinely useful being able to skip between 4 time zones at the touch of a button, because I was, at that time, genuinely interested in the time in 4 different time zones. Outstanding watches, hence why I have 3 of them. One more Casio in the box though, and it's another rebuy. It's the Casio Aquaterra, the EFV100. They released these in a range of new colours this year. I picked up this orangey yellow one. I'm going to keep it and do a bit of a sapphire crystal swap on it at some point in the future. Alright, let's do the micro brands. As you saw earlier on, the Vanuatu, the Aloha and a few of the others fell by the wayside, but I did add a few new ones instead, and let's start with a couple of those. In my SOTC video last year, I said that Fera were on my hit list for this year, and I was delighted therefore to be able to add this Aquamatic to my collection. It's a fun and colourful watch, as a lot of Feras tend to be, and I really enjoyed taking it with me on a kind of overseas resort pool style holiday a couple of months ago. I picked up 2 new micro watches in New York in October, both directly from the brand owners, which was a real treat. The first is my Islander Port Jefferson, bought from none other than Mark, the legend that is Mark Franco from Long Island Watches and the associated YouTube channel. Great watch, great value. I also bought this Brewmatic directly from Jonathan at Windup. It completely changes the dynamic, I think, when you get to meet the person that created the timepiece. And this year I was also lucky enough to meet Ivan, the man behind Vario Watches. I think this is his standout creation so far, the Empire GMT, beautiful little watch, which I was delighted to wear when I visited the building that inspired it, the Empire State Building, also in New York, in my trip there in October. Plus, I got to meet the team behind Formex watches this year. I met Raphael at Windup, although he was viciously hungover, so didn't have a lot to say for himself. The Essence Leggera is a cracker of a watch though, so light, so comfortable. I'm delighted to have one in my collection, and I've had one in my collection now for about the last 4 years. I put myself in a bit of a position, a bit of a pickle with one particular brand this year. I have a rule that I only retain 1 watch from each AliExpress brand and 1 watch from each micro brand. Otherwise, things could escalate quickly. Things could quickly get out of control. But I now have 2 watches in my collection by Dekla. Dekla are a small German company who make everything in-house. I highly recommend checking them out if you're in the market for a Flieger and you're okay with venturing beyond the big 5. I've had their Turbulence modern pilot's watch in my collection for a couple of years, partly because it's great, partly because it has my channel logo printed on the dial. As I said, they're all kind of custom made to order. That is a service that they offer. This year I reviewed their Bauhaus, a truly gorgeous 4020 with white gold hands and a simple case, and an ETA 6498 in the back. How am I supposed to choose between these two? Which one would you choose? Would you choose the Timeless Classic or the Vanity Project? Or should I just break my rule and keep them both long term? Anyway, moving on to a couple of quartz pieces that have been around for a while now. Momentum Sea Quartz, Magnum PI's watch. I bought this one a couple of years ago and I really enjoy it. I reviewed their UDT recently, but it wasn't nearly as good as this one. And the Phoebus Eagle Ray Quartz GMT. They released this one before the NH34 craze took over the affordable GMT end of the market. Phoebus have made a number of great watches over the years. I think this is arguably their best, hence why I still have it. And hence why I have a Zelos Mako 2 in bronze in my collection long term, because I think it's one of Zelos's best ever. Insane lume and insane value when new. This is another watch that I enjoy taking on holiday and letting that bronze case do its thing. And yet another best of breed, in my humble opinion of course, is the Dorenzo DRZ02R. You know I'm a big fan of Sergio Dorenzo's work, and this to me is his best watch. It's a smaller version of his second watch and the one that really defined his look overall. Beautiful contours, lovely case shape, lovely bracelet, and a really nice dial colour as well. No wonder this one is a keeper. And finally, it's a young Australian micro brand that is an Erebus. It's HZ Watches out of Melbourne. Quartz only, great value. This is the HZ01. I have their HZ02 chronograph on order. Okay, what about the Seikos? It has been a brutal year for my Seikos as usual. You saw the number that got chopped earlier on. But I have added a few select new ones to the collection this year. So carryovers from previous years include not one, not two, but three SKX. A modded 013 with sapphire crystal and a lume ceramic bezel insert. A stock standard 007J model, safe Jenny, it has never left the house, and a fully modded but slightly broken 009, again sapphire crystal and insert and NH36 swap. I also have my modded SRPE two-tone. This one has a strap code Jubilee and a piece of domed sapphire crystal. I really rate the SRPE. I think if you want a no-nonsense auto from a big brand for a couple $100, this should be at the very top of your shopping list. It's a shame they don't make the SARB anymore though, because if they did, that would be the one I would recommend rather than the SRPE. I'll never sell this watch. I've worn it a lot over the years, as you can see. And just like the Aquaterra, it's one of these watches that once you put it on, it sticks to your wrist like a limpet. It just doesn't want to leave. Now, the Hojicha roasted rice got the chop. It lost out to this watch, to my Irish coffee pressage. It's such a sweet watch. Great size as well. I don't wear it all that often, but it's going nowhere. It's a lovely watch to take on holiday as that kind of evening, going out, dressing up watch. It looks like $1 million, but it didn't cost $1 million, so I'm not terrified taking it on holiday with me. New this year is an Arnie. Now I have flirted with Arnie a couple of times, so to speak, but I never actually bought one until I came across this Tropical Lagoon on sale here in Australia for $400. That's a great price on a great watch, and it wears so much better than you would expect a watch of this size and shape to wear. Another new addition is the Darth Speed Timer. This is from their Night series. I only picked it up a few months back, but I'm really quite enjoying it. It looks great during the day and after dark thanks to fantastic lume from those big green hands and indices. Okay, final category, old and interesting. Some watches are one, some watches are the other, some watches are both. And there are a couple of big brand watches in here as well that didn't quite fit into any of the other boxes. My Tissot PRX, for example. Now, as much as I enjoy the quartz and have recommended the quartz on a number of occasions, the price on used autos keeps dropping. And there will probably come a point over the next 12 months where I could flip this one and get into an auto for 150 Aussie dollars or so, and I probably will do that. But for now at least, this one lives on. New member of the collection this year is this striking Mido Multifort Big Date. Left field, but very wearable sports watch that looks great in this rose gold and brown colour. Why don't we see this big date complication more often from other Swatch Group brands? Every collection needs at least one oddity, and at the moment, this for me is that. It's a peacock central tourbillon with a simply incredible piece of sapphire that forms the whole top half of the case. It's actually quite wearable because of the lugless design and the rubber strap, and 50 meters of water resistance means there's a little bit of practicality here as well. Just don't ask what the time is because I've no idea. Now you know I don't do vintage unless of course it's a little bit special, and this Doxa is a little bit special. This one was fully restored for me by the lovely Michael Bolton a couple of years ago. It's a truly stunning little watch that runs as it did when it was new. Another Casio lurking in a slightly different box is this one. It's the Casio W10, another safe Jenny. It has never left the house. It's the first watch that I can remember owning when I was 8 or 9 or so, and I found this one new old stock from a dealer in Spain a few years ago. I bought it knowing it would never leave the house, so I'm alright with that. And this is my granddad's Cami, another kind of memory watch. I'm delighted that I have a little bit of him in my collection. I got that one serviced a few years ago, but the guy put the wrong crystal on it, so it hasn't gone too far since then. But hey, at least I know the movement works as it should, even if the crystal still fouls the hands. And then it's the usual selection of broken Omegas that round out the collection, but shock horror, one of them is actually working this year. This little Seamaster, to give it its due, has always worked. It just needs a battery every couple of years. I've had this watch now for over 30 years, and it was my father's for a couple of years before then. But you know what? I will be loath to give it to my son, at least not until he's sensible enough not to lose it or to sell it. My pre-bond is still broken. One day I will give it to the Swatch Group for the full repair treatment. Unfortunately, that will be the day where I happen to have about £3 lying around that I don't know what to do with. That day will not be happening anytime soon. But you know what? There might just be hope on the horizon for my Omega Genève. Erebus uses the services of an excellent watchmaker in Newcastle. I reckon I should send him this one and my granddad's Cami for repair. Stay tuned, after 6 years as a box dweller, it might finally see some wrist action. Well, that's it. That is the stock take completed for another 12 months. Have you been counting along at home? I hope you have. I totted them up across all the different categories. I make it 64 watches, which is almost exactly the same number as I had last year, even though there's been about 25-30% turnover, those 18 watches in the chopped section at the beginning. That did mean 45 made it through the course of 12 months though, hanging on to their spot, sometimes grimly. But what about my aims and aspirations for 2025? What is that one watch that I mentioned that I have my eyes on in particular? When I did my mid-year collection update, I talked about the fact that I have a major milestone birthday coming up next year. And no, it's not 21, in case you were wondering. I also talked about the possibility of trying to pick up a Grand Seiko Spring Drive Cherry Blossom, a watch that I tried on for the first time this year and fell a little bit in love with. I'm just not sure I'm 9,000 Australian dollars in love with that watch, or any other watch for that matter. But if the dominoes fall in the right order, there might be a little something coming my way that would make a very nice birthday present indeed. I made another video in the middle of the year talking about a watch I felt was the used luxury watch bargain of 2024. If you didn't see that video, the watch in question was the Tudor Ranger. I've always thought the Ranger was low-key spectacular, if that makes any sense at all. Now, Stephen, Mr. P, my friend and business partner at EREBUS Watches, he has a Tudor Ranger. In fact, he has pretty much the entire Tudor catalogue. He's on very good terms with Tudor. Such good terms, in fact, that they introduced him to their colleagues at Rolex a few months ago. He put himself on the list for a Submariner and an Explorer. He got the call for the Sub just before we went to New York, and he's been told that he's the next cab off the rank, so to speak, for the Rolex Explorer. If he buys the Explorer, there's a deal to be done on his Tudor Ranger, and we both love to do deals. I would probably have to move on a few pieces in order to facilitate it, but the Ranger would be a fantastic addition to my top box and a great birthday present gift to myself come November. So that is really my only plan then for the next 12 months. There will probably be the customary 25 to 30% churn on the collection as things come and go on a whim, but the core pieces will probably all survive as they have done now for the last 8 State of the Collection videos. Well done for making it all the way to the end of this one. If you want to watch last year's, click here, or the first ever SOTC from the end of 2017, click here. Thanks for watching this one. I'll see you again in the next one.